Welcome back to Light Talk, where the paranormal and the supernatural is a part of our everyday lives. We have a very special guest today. She's going to be a fantastic stories with us. So let's get started. And I'm excited to have her here. So welcome to the show and go ahead and introduce yourself.
It's very nice to be here tonight, Dana. My name is Sai Marie Johnson. I'm an author and creative lead of three different podcasts myself, and I'm just here to kind of share with you a little bit of my experience.
Awesome. Well, yeah, you have quite a few of them, as we spoke about earlier. So, yeah, so you want to start with how you got started with this and some of your first experiences that you've come across?
Well, I told you that the first real experience that I could remember was when I was 7 years old. However, there was an experience that my mom told me about when I was four that I feel like that's kind of important as someone else pointing out maybe that I was a little, I don't want to say different, but that I was just spiritually intuitive. Um, so with my mom, the situation when I was four, again, I don't really remember this too well myself. There's some things from that age period I remember vividly, but you know how that goes. Um, so we went to this little town and there was this little market and it had these big old like heavy wooden doors like the ones that you might see and you'd expect like some epic Viking movie when they're opening these big heavy doors. I mean, they were really ornate heavy wooden doors. That part I do remember because I had went to the store later and those same doors were still there for years until they replaced them. And that kind of did jar my memory to I've been here before. So that kind of makes me believe that that this actually happened. But at first I was like, I don't remember that until later it kind of got jarred. But she had told me for a long time that when I was four, we went into that store that had those doors. And the moment that we walked inside, I was like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to go inside. And she's like, you don't want to come in and get some candy or a drink or something? And I was like, no, something bad happened here, something really dark. Like there's something really dark and blackness here. And I kept being really resistant and I didn't want to go past the threshold into the store. And I was not going. So being that I was 4 years old, my mom was kind of like, okay. And she went in the store and she let me stay out there with my uncle and she got me some stuff and then we left and she was like, you don't think that that's kind of, weird? Yeah, she said that. And come to find out later, that particular town, oh, there's a lot of different types of things that happen there. Um, and I don't want to say anything to make people feel like I'm saying like there's like bad activity or dark energy there, but there's a lot of things that have happened historically where there's possibility that bad things happen. And my mom knew that and had that knowledge as an adult that I did not have as a child. So it was very unique for me to just be like, never been there before and just, this place is not good. This is a really bad, evil place. Of course, I didn't use those words because I didn't have them yet. But that was basically the gist of what I was getting at. So that aside, when I actually noticed that something was a little bit different about me, I was 7 years old. And at that time, my mom had a boyfriend, and my youngest sister was actually a premature baby, and she was in the NICU at this time. There was a lot going on with her. In she was in the hospital for months. I mean, like a very extended stay. So there was a lot of different kind of stressors with that. And so happened that my sister had an update in the NICU, and my mom was trying to get a hold of her father, her boyfriend, and she couldn't get a hold of him, and he didn't come home from work on time, and she couldn't find him. So, because of the situation with my sister, she decided that she needed to go find him. It was a very critical situation. And so she got us in the car, me and my younger brother, and he was like 2, 3 years old at this time. And she goes and she drove to a couple of different places. And through the grapevine of, process of elimination, she discovered he wasn't at work, he wasn't at his parents' house, anything like that. But she was able to find some friends that told her where they thought he might be. And it was this house far across town that we none of us had ever been to before. And my mom drove over there and she was like, okay, look, I have to go and I have to get him. And you need to stay in the car. It shouldn't take that long. I'm just going to go and see if he's here and, so we can go to the hospital together. So I'm like, okay. And I'm sitting in the car and waiting, and I can see her from the car and I can see her on the porch. And she's talking to this one woman who I kind of vaguely recognized. Um, and a few minutes went by and I had to go to the bathroom. And so I got out of the car reluctantly because I didn't want to get in trouble. And I knew my mom was already obviously dealing with very important things. And I went up to her and I was like, Mom, I need to go to the bathroom. And she looked at the lady that she was talking to and she goes, Can we step inside? I'm just going to step inside right here and watch her to go to the bathroom and then let her do her business and, she'll go back to the car. And the lady was like, Yeah, sure. And she let me go in and my mom stepped inside and she's like, The bathroom's over there. So I went into the bathroom, did my business. And apparently, in the time that I was in the bathroom, they continued to have whatever discussion that they were having. And I wasn't privy to very much. I didn't have any foreknowledge of why he was there, who these people were, anything like that. I just came out of the bathroom and I could hear my mom say, I know that it was one of you. And as I walked out of the bathroom, there was, to start out with, I forgot a part. When I was coming in, there were three people on the couch in an L-shaped couch. So when I came out of the bathroom, that's how it was. There was a woman here, and there was a woman in the very middle, kind of aligned with my mom, and me coming out of the bathroom, and then there was my mom's boyfriend. So when I came out of the bathroom, my eyes immediately met with the woman in the middle of the couch, like direct magnetically into her soul. And it was like I could see through her. And I knew when my mom had said that sentence, the moment she said it, that I was looking at the person. And I walked up to my mom and I pulled on her sleeve slightly. And she was like, No, I'm dealing with something. And I was like, Mom, it's her. And I pointed at the woman directly. And I mean, and I was just looking at her with my finger pointed straight at her, like, it's her. And the color just completely drained from her face, but she didn't say a word. And my mom just kind of looked around and she's like, I don't have the time for this. My premature infant is in the hospital. I came here because you needed to know about what's going on, but I guess you have things that are more important to you to deal with. And we left. Well, my mom ended up calling my dad, which was me and my brother's father. And she was like, I need you to take the kids because of what's happening with, my youngest sister at the time. And I have to be in the hospital and I can't have them there. Um, and so my dad took us because that happened like at the precipice of the weekend, and he took us for the weekend. And then when we came back, come to find out, my mom and this woman had a confrontation at my mom's apartments. And this woman had been having an affair with my mom's boyfriend while my sister was in NICU. And she attacked her, and it was just this big, huge, terrible ordeal and scene. But I was 100% correct. I,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
could never tell you how or why, never knew the woman, still don't know anything about the woman. Just that
Wow.
experience.
Do you have that often since then? Do you get these inclinations, or is it just like a spotty kind of thing? Or
People have asked me, can I just go in and assess something and discern it like that immediately? And the answer is no. It comes as it comes. Like it's very unpredictable. Now, as I've gotten older, I've learned to trust my intuition when I start to get a feeling and to immediately pay attention to that. Um, but when I was younger, because it was so sporadic and I mean, I was just kind of, like, oh, it's no big, I was just a, it was just a special guess or something. I can't, it's nothing that I'm not a psychic. I can't just like make predictions and see things into the future. It doesn't work that way.
yeah, wow. So, but it still happens, and now as you're older, it still happens, and you're still getting these inclinations. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I have one for more recent time. I mean, I have several that I could tell you, but I know we only got like an hour. So, this one I
That's
think,
okay.
um, this one I think will really resonate with that kind of experience. And because, so this was like 2017 or 18, somewhere in there, kind of hazy on the exact dates, pre-COVID. Um, but
It's all good.
so yeah, I was dating a different, boyfriend at that time and everything. I Me and him were kind of like, he would do construction work and different stuff like that, and also security jobs. So he ended up getting this job, and he asked me, did I want to come with him? Because there was, possibility for me to make money too. And it was going to be a demolition job for him that lasted quite a while, but they only had like a small gig that they needed my help with, which was when he well, okay, let me explain the project. So the landowner got this property, and it was house contents and all. And the people that had owned it had defaulted on the taxes. They had passed away, and there was nobody that claimed it. And he bought it for, a pretty, cheap cost, an affordable cost. And so he was like, okay, I'm going to need to go through this house because it was effects and all. And I need to go through everything, before I can have it demolished so he could build a warehouse. So they tasked me with going through different effects, boxes of paperwork, and all those kinds of things. And at least that's what was, presented to me. So I was like, okay, that sounds like a good job. It was a pretty good amount of money, and it wasn't going to take a long time. So I was like, I'll go out there and I'll do it. So I get there and I find out that the first room that they're going to want me to do this in is actually an attic. And it's just like out of a horror movie attic too. I mean, it was just like it, where you walk up and it's one of those pull down attics with the old, ladder kind of stairs and everything. And I wasn't scared or anything. I was just like, okay, whatever. And it was a bright spring day, so didn't think anything of it. I'm just gonna go up these stairs and do what I gotta do. So one of the people who was on the crew, his name was Chris. It was him and then me and then my boyfriend at the time who was behind me. And so Chris went up the ladder first, and then I went up next. And I got about halfway up the ladder and I got this extremely Arctic freezing cold chill. And I stopped in the middle of the ladder and I looked down at Brad, my ex, and I looked up at Chris and I was like, I immediately said it. Did something bad happen here? And Chris scoffed, and he was at the top of the ladder and he had stepped onto the foyer, and he goes, you should come up here. You should come up here. It's not safe to be in the middle of the ladder. And he would not answer me until I stepped up on the foyer on the landing, and I was sure-footed. And he's like, so you felt it too. I'm not the only one. A couple of us have felt that kind of same chilling feeling when we first came up here. And I
Wow.
said, well, then what's going on? Like, is there
Yeah.
something associated? Um, and of course he's like, well, we don't know. The people that last owned this house, they passed away. It was bought, off of default tax loan payment not being paid. Um, we're hoping that whatever we can uncover in this paperwork or whatever will give us some kind of an idea. But yeah, that's one of the things and one of the reasons why we wanted someone else to come up here and do it, because a few of them have gotten kind of creeped out. So
Gee, thanks.
I'm like, right? That's great. So then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go outside and I gotta prepare myself because I know that I'm picking something up there and I don't know what it is. I will say it didn't, like, it was that really cold feeling, but it wasn't like that terrifying, malevolent feeling or that darkness like I had described when I was really a little kid. But it was enough to make me go, wait a minute, I gotta go kind of step back from this energy and meditate and be prepared to brace for whatever I'm going into, because I don't know what it is. And I ended up going back up there, and I did get the feeling again. I will say though, again, that beautiful spring day, there were great windows in that attic, surprisingly, and it actually had a lot of light, so it made it less intimidating. But I was like, I went up there and I said it out loud. I was like, look, I don't know what happened here. I don't know the context, but I'm here to find out. And maybe I can help bring some peace to that. And so I started going through, excuse me, I started going through the effects and the boxes. And that's when I started to piece together some stuff. And I was able to find that through these boxes and a couple of journals and just different documents and spending all day up there, that there was a disabled woman who was kept in that attic. And she was pretty much just kept away. And the two people that passed away were her caretakers who did not take care of her very well. They were very negligent. They kind of just locked her up there in the attic and accrued her checks, until eventually she did pass and she wrote about her sadness and her melancholy. And I began to understand that's what it was. It was this deep, I mean, like visceral sadness, just completely stuck with no one to ever help. And it was so heavy and just so bad. And we went through there, and after that happened and we started bringing the boxes down, I told him, I was like, I feel like we should, maybe light some sage up there or have somebody come in and do some energy cleansing work here before you knock this house down. I would recommend that. And I believe that he did. And there was never any other kind of like scary circumstances or ghostly behavior. It was just this really heavy, burdensome sadness. Like it was just scarred on the place.
Oh, like in the walls or something like that. It was just
Yeah.
her
Yeah.
energy stayed. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, that's
Yeah,
sad.
it was a very sad one. But like I said, when I came in and I addressed it, I was like, look, I didn't know if it was a remaining ghost and I do believe in spirits and stuff like that. So I didn't know what I was dealing with, but I wanted to ensure that I could do the job and maybe try to find a resolution. And I feel like I did when I uncovered those things. Somebody else knew and was able to be like, look, this is what happened to this person. And it was brought out to the light of day instead of kept cooped up in a way that, that was able to, somebody knew her story finally got told. And I feel like after that day, I came back a few other times. It got lighter. You could feel it getting lighter.
Yeah. She was happier and she was able to move on, huh?
I think
Did you feel that?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, good for you. Good for you. That's
Yeah.
really awesome.
I mean, it broke my heart. It still does to tell it because it's like if if somebody would have been able to do something while she was still alive, what the difference of life could have been. But in retrospect, I guess that's the most that you can get on closure. And there was no like descendants or anybody else to really bring that to her. So it's it's one of those situations where I'm like, it emphasizes where I can't predict it. It just happens. And I never really know what the energy pickup is going to be until I'm, like the tuning fork. And then I'm there and this is what's happening.
Yeah. That's how I am. I'm like, when things happen, it just happens. And there's like, I'm picking up on a few things of reasonings and things like that. But when it happens, it just happens. I'm not one of those that can say, okay, now I'm ready. I'm open now. Come and join.
Right. And
Like
I mean,
tonight.
exactly. And I do histories of horror, which is it's important that I emphasize this. We do a lot of true crime, but we also talk about supernatural and paranormal experiences and really anything that could be considered a history of horror. So my co-host and I, like she's done Waverly Hills, I've been to the Lalaurie Mansion, and we both have picked up things while we were there. When I went there, I knew that it was a possibility that I could, but I like even when I was with my daughter when I did it and my brother the second time. And they're like, "Do you think you're going to pick up anything?" And I was like, you already know that I will or I won't. Sometimes, ghosts don't always want to show themselves. And depending on what else is happening in the vicinity, especially in the French Quarters, people going by all the time. So I have had an experience at Lalaurie though, at the front door. I've seen, like a little, they look like little children ghosts in, the sides of the door. And people have said multiple times that if you go past the front door at Lalaurie Mansion, that many people have seen the same thing. But I got pictures of it and I posted it on the internet. And of course it looks like orbs or kind of like cloud people. So people are going to make their arguments on whether they believe it's true. But I know what I experienced, the same with all of these things. And I do have the corroboration of people that, were working with me on the site and saw and experienced and I showed them, hey, this is what I see. And after all the things you guys are telling me, this is, what my analysis is. But I'm never a person that feels like I need to convince people to believe me. I just tell them what I experienced and let them take it from there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of how I've been. Is like this is what I've experienced. I mean, I can't say anything different because this is all I know, because this is what I experienced, you know?
Yep,
So yeah, I can't say anything different because this is it and that's that, and I'm sticking with it.
exactly. And my stories never change. Like it's like, why would
Mhm.
they? This is what happened.
Exactly.
So I another thing that happened that I think might be a good one to bring up is I was out, and this is important, especially for people who go like out hiking or camping and anything wilderness related. If you get a feeling that feels like something's not right, wherever you are, stop it and drop it. Just get out. And this is what I mean by that. So we were having a day camp day where we went out to this place called Clay Creek Recreation Area in Oregon. It's beautiful. It's close to the coast. Um, and we were gonna, just kind of go around and teach my son about things in the woods, finding frogs, salamanders, just kind of an adventure day. And for a while, we did most of the park walking around it. There was nobody there. It was pretty empty. And we canvassed almost all of the park and we came around the corner to this one spot and there was a campsite that had been posted up. And it wasn't eerie. It was just like, okay, it's a campsite. We walked kind of around and we didn't see anyone. That at first kind of made me perk an eyebrow because most people don't leave their campsites completely alone. People steal stuff and things like that.
Mhm.
But I was just like, okay, maybe they are off in the bathroom. Who knows? They'll be back. Didn't think anything of it. So then we decided that we were going to walk to the other side, and we went down to the other side. And my ex and my son found a log that had some frogs on it, and they were checking them out. While they did that, I started walking forward towards the trail that I knew that we were going to go start on, and I was going to wait for them at the trailhead. Well, something caught my attention on the trail, and it was kind of like it was light down there. It was like the way this trail was, think of like a grove of trees, like a tunnel. Very pretty, like Hobbit-like almost, something you might see in Lord of the Rings. Um, and there was like a sunbeam, and it was really pretty, and I was like, oh, maybe I can catch a picture of that while I'm waiting, right? Because I like to take pictures of nature and stuff. This is a hobby thing I do. Um,
Too.
so I walked down, and then again, I got that same sudden, and the birds were singing and everything at this point. There, it's pretty, it's beautiful. I got that same sudden chilling feeling, and all of a suddenly the forest was instantly silent. No more birds singing. And I paused instantly, and that sunbeam pretty picture was no longer that alluring because something made me feel like if I went further down that trail, I was going to find something I didn't want to see. That said, I turned back around and I walked towards my ex and my son, and I was like, come on, let's go back this way. I want to go see if the people are back at that campsite. It's just the way I think, right? He's like, why? And I was like, I just, something's telling me not to go down this trail and we should go back and see if those people are back at that campsite. So I walked with him back over to the campsite. We looked in, still there was nobody there. We were like, hey, is there anybody in the tent? We tried to, like, is everybody okay? We've been here a few hours. We haven't seen any activity. Nothing. I again still didn't want to go down that trail, especially with my son. So my ex was like, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "We need to go to the forest ranger station and we need to tell them something's weird over here. Like something is weird over here. This is an abandoned site, is what it looks like. We've been here for 3, 4 hours, nothing." And I got an immediate bad feeling of there's something down that trail. I don't want my kid and I to walk down there and find somebody, you know, I just know. And because of the way these
Yeah.
things are, let's just go to the forest and ranger station and tell them. So we did, and they took the report. Now, I don't know if they ever did find anybody or if they found a person that was alive, and maybe I was just panicked and I just got a bad feeling and was like, I'm not dealing with this. But the whole thing was so eerie that they did take it seriously and they did go down there and they checked. And they're like, we can't really give you any more information about personal identifiables if we do find anything down there, but we will rest assured go check on it. And that's what I mean, like if you get a bad feeling in the forest, even even if there was no body down that trail, and God forbid there was, if you get that feeling in the forest, turn around and go back to safety. It's better to be like, even if somebody says, you're being a chicken, it's better to take your intuition and not go into a dangerous situation and come back to be able to enjoy it and experience it another day.
So what are your feelings looking back? What are your feelings of what that was? Do you feel like
It
what were
felt
you thinking?
My immediate thoughts was someone died down there. Someone's deceased down this trail somewhere. And it there wasn't anything particularly off-putting or upsetting about the campsite to make me think that. It's just the absence of any persons for several hours, and that it was just such a weird feeling. There's something bad down there, and all of the forest going silent in tune with it. I mean, my mom's Native American, so certain things like that I was taught to pay a lot of attention to. And in addition to my intuition, that's where my thoughts were going. That's why I immediately turned around to him and said, let's go check that campsite again. Um, and see if things are, maybe get some details about what's here, and go talk to the ranger station, because I was really afraid that, I mean, people go out in the woods all the time and they hurt themselves sometimes by accident or unintentionally. And when you're a parent and you're wanting to have this be a great experience for your child and introduce them to the adventures in the woods, which is great,
Mhm.
there's always that risk that you might run into something like that, or animals. And I mean, I live in Oregon, we have bears and cougars. There's all kinds of risks, so you do want to, of course, teach your children and bring them out there into the wilderness so they can start to learn how to be vigilant, how to trust their own intuition. But also, like I said, that feeling and me thinking there was certain death down that way. And that's the way that I felt about it. Like it was the kind of almost like folkloric movement where certain death like was just there. And I didn't know if that was towards me or towards someone else. But the way that my mind works, and maybe also because I'm an author, with the weird campsite and having that feeling the moment I hit that trail, I was like, I'm not risking this. And I even expressed that to, the Rangers. I was like, look, I'm not trying to be paranoid. I just, something seemed to arrive from this. And it's just a very strange that we were there. There was no one else there for so many hours, and we didn't see a single person at the site.
What do you think the ranger, I mean, from what it sounds like, the ranger has had these stories before. It's almost like this isn't a new thing. I mean, sounds like, okay, yeah, and here goes another story. We'll check into it because we've had other people talk in this too.
Yeah. I mean, these kinds of things happen. And I think that that's important to pay attention to, because even with crime investigations, sometimes they rely on people that just have this unexplainable, knowing, like they just like, this is the hunch I got. Just trust me on this and see what happens. And then they're proven right. And I think it's happened so many times that now they're like, it's better. to just spend the 5 or 10 minutes going down there and seeing than it is to ignore it and there actually be someone and someone with their kids finally do go down there and they're the ones that find it. And that does happen, Seth.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. That, yeah, we've only had one experience like that. We went on a trip and I saw a park off like a block off the main path. And so, yeah, we'll go check out the park. It's not that far. We could still see the main path from there. We started walking that direction. My husband's like, mm-mm, nope, it's not feeling right. So we turned around and came back. It's like, we didn't test it. So,
And
yeah,
that's the way that you do get to ensure you get to go back, and there's always another hiking trail somewhere, I'm sure.
yeah,
So, the it's kind of sad in the fact that I was like, oh, this might be a great photo op, but in the long run, I didn't regret my decision. I felt like, we got a good experience. My son got to see frogs and salamanders, and at the end of the day, everybody that was in my party didn't have any kind of trauma. So that's what matters to me.
yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, you got to go with the gut and your feelings because, yeah,
Yeah, and I mean,
yeah,
as far as other ones, I've had a number of paranormal experiences. Let's see, which one would I should I tell you about first? I lived in a house that was actually haunted in Alabama for a little while. And that one, when I moved in, my ex-husband told me, look, I've lived in this house since I was 10 years old. It absolutely is haunted. It's a little boy. And at first I was like, okay, it's not that I don't believe in ghosts. I was just, until I have an experience, I didn't feel anything when I went into that house. I didn't feel anything scary. I didn't feel anything. And that's one of those experiences where I can highlight that just because someone else has had something doesn't always mean every person that's sensitive will. It's it's just one of those things. We're all different. So, I don't know if it's because we each tune into the frequency at a different rate or what, but anyways, I lived there for a few months before my daughter was like, Mom, come here, come here. And I was like, what's going on? And there were these beautiful French doors in the middle of this house. And I come up to them and she's standing on the carpeted side. And when you open them, I opened them to the dining room, which had like linoleum. And so I open them and she's like, look at the floor. There's footprints on the floor. They're wet little footprints. And I look down and sure enough, there's these wet little footprints. And I look at her and I'm like, did you do that? And she's like, Mom, look at how small they are. And they're like the size of like a 3 or 4 year old. And at this time, my daughter was like 8. So there's a significant difference.
yeah, a
Um,
little bit.
yeah. And I was like, well, they are pretty small. She's like, Mom, I just came over here. I was going to go to the bathroom and I seen these little footprints, these little wet footprints. And my ex was not there and my son was not born yet. The only people in the house was me and my daughter. And so I looked at her and I was like, you sure you didn't pull a fast one? She's like, no, I'm serious. Like, so we go and we follow them and they go all the way to the bathroom and we go in the bathroom and there's nothing there. There's just the water footprints that go from the hallway to the bathroom. And I'm like, I didn't. So I cleaned them up. And when my ex got back, I asked him about it. I was like, is this what you're talking about? Like, you never really described to me how the hauntings went. You just told me that it was haunted by a little boy. And he goes, well, we believe that he drowned in the bathtub. So yeah, like the first thing that he's seen was um the footprints, and then he actually ended up seeing the little boy. He's like, I seen the little boy after a few months of living here when I was a kid, and he was all blue, and he said that he was dressed from like in 50s kind of outfit. um and so I never myself seen the ghost. I never seen the little boy ghost, but my daughter did say that she's seen him peeking behind a corner one time, and my ex said that, and I did see the watery footprints. And other people that we met or came and stayed with us or had ever stayed in the house, there were several people that saw them too and experienced it. Um, but they never did anything about it. Like he never saged it or tried to exercise it or prayed it away. And honestly, I lived there for 5 years, nothing really bad ever happened. It's not like we had poltergeist experiences. The worst thing that happened was we might hear a door slam and then there be the little footprints. And it was a phenomenon. It was just strange.
Do you think um, this was residual, or was this an actual ghost, or was this, what do you feel this
I mean,
energy was?
I tended to believe what my ex told me when he said that they believed that the little boy drowned in the bathtub. It was one of those old, deep clawfoot bathtubs. I think that from the what we pieced together, he might have fallen and hit his head, and then that's what, caused the drowning. And his mom and dad corroborated the same thing, that the same experience with him that I had with my daughter. um but yeah, I think it was a ghost, and that it was actually someone that had passed away. And it also is important to note that where we lived in that house right beside us um was a church, and on the other side was another house that was notoriously haunted and could not keep tenants for more than 4 months. I mean, I lived there for 5 years and we seen like 12 different families go through that house.
Um,
So I don't know if it was just maybe that entire kind of section of area was just very um steeped in paranormal activity, you might say. Another thing that might be important to note there is in that same town, I had countless like UFO experiences, and I wasn't the only one. I had other people that had them too. However, I will say it was close to Eglin Air Force Base near Florida. So some of the aircraft, and my ex-husband was military, we do recognize was test aircraft or just different, because Eglin, they do a lot of like there's all of the branches of military have a base down there at Eglin. It is the biggest Air Force base in the world. So this is a gigantic circumference of space, and they are constantly testing stuff out there. But then there were those things that just didn't make sense. That it didn't seem like, especially with having someone who was military, um, that we seen together, that they didn't make sense.
mm,
And I can't tell you if it was extraterrestrial for sure. I can just tell you that there were odd things that I seen in the sky. And those experiences, on top of being highly intuitive and everything else that I've told you, just kind of led me into being a lot more open-minded about the possibility of, all different kinds of existences of things. Interdimensionals and aliens are not off the compass for me. But I'm also a person who's very grounded in research and learning about things before I make any broad claims. So that's why I tell people I've seen some very weird things that don't make sense in the sky. I do understand that our military does have some, especially with AI now, some crazy technology, but then there are some things that happen just like with these experiences that they just don't make sense. An example of one is my friend and I were walking one night, and this was in Alabama, close to the Florida border, like I was saying. So we were walking, and it was a warm summer night and it was really pretty. And we were going down to the corner store, and that was like 3 or 4 blocks from the house. So we were just enjoying the walk to get a drink and chat. And we're walking, and it was dark, and there was no cars, because this was a little town. Basically the only thing that stayed open was that store after like 9 o'clock. So, and it wasn't quite that late, but it was starting to get quiet, no traffic, everything shut down. And so we're walking, and all of a suddenly we both see this light just kind of zip across the sky, and it's going like this way in front of us, and then it kind of like shifts towards like kind of on the side of us. And I see it do that, and then it just vanishes. And she stops and looks at me, and she's all, "Did you just see that?" And I said, yeah, that's not like any shooting star I've ever seen. Like that was a very specific rotational movement. And then it just disappeared. And she's like, yeah, I saw the same thing. And you're right. It just disappeared right there. And we were both looking there and we're watching for a minute. And then all of a suddenly, a regular looking military aircraft shows up like a couple of, I mean, in the sky circumference, it looks like it's a few inches above where, but it's actually
Yeah.
like several feet above, but you can see like it's above where that thing vanished and it's just there and it's kind of like hovering. And I'm like, well, that's military aircraft. And she's like, yeah, but where's the thing that was there? That's not the same thing. That was like a bright yellow light. This has got like, it was I believe it was an Apache. Um, and so we were talking about that. And as we're talking about that, the thing flickered back underneath of that same aircraft again. And then it disappeared. And then showed up like it showed up like over here behind the helicopter kind of thing, like off to a distance, and did the zip thing right past like where our house was, back towards where we had walked from.
Oh,
And
wow.
just was gone. And it moved so fast, it was like a light being moving through the sky. And it would have seemed like a shooting star on the surface because of the coloration if it hadn't done these different erratic behaviors. You know what I mean? Um, and I actually was so perplexed by it that I contacted MUFON. I was like, hey, look, this is what we've seen. This is what's going on. And they're like, well, do you know that Eglon's down there? And I was like, yes, I'm very aware that Eglon's down here. My husband used to be stationed over there. That's why we live so close. Like, I absolutely get it. And I just don't know what me and my friend saw. And she's here to, corroborate the same thing. And then a few weeks later, my ex and I seen something similar together, same situation, walking at night. It got to the point where me and him would make date nights where we would just drive to different places to watch the stars to see if we could see anything. Um, and again, that wasn't really so much I picked up something weird like the sensations or I guess maybe you might call it extrasensory perception. But it was definitely interesting to be a person that witnessed some unexplained phenomena in the sky and more than one time. So yeah.
I've had one experience. Well, I remember one experience, but I wrote in my journal that I've seen it prior. I don't remember it, but it it was in my journal. But I saw lights going to work. Like you say, it's like just like an inch above the earth, the horizon, but it was like 10 miles away from me and just bright a flash of lights 5 times going across the sky. And then it was gone. That was it. And
Yeah,
it
the
was a
first time I've
bright
seen
light.
it. Yeah,
What
the
was that?
first time I've seen anything weird like that, I was here in Oregon over Fern Ridge, and there are actually accounts that people have talked about that same summer, and I think it was like 1993. Several people all throughout Oregon seeing those same lights, and I seen them with my friend when I was 9 years old, and that was when I first was like, well, maybe they're not hoaxes. Maybe there really is something out there. But I think the biggest thing that's ever happened to me to make me really start believing in my own ability and seeking more knowledge and spirituality was when I had my near-death experience. And I know that we're getting towards the end of the show, so that might be the one thing to close out on, and maybe we could talk again about some other things later. But
Absolutely.
that experience, I so my youngest son is 15, in a couple of days actually. And I was put in the hospital the day after Valentine's Day, the year that he was born, because I had a rare complication called placenta precreta. And it's actually becoming more common now, or placenta or accreta even, because of how many people had multiple C-sections like between the 90s and the early 2000s. So to make a long story short, because it's a long technical medical situation. What happened with me is because I had previous C-sections is my placenta started to grow completely through my uterus and it started to try to grow into my bladder, which is not a situation we can have. So,
Oh
um, this caused me to suffer from sudden bleeding, and they were worried that I was going to miscarry or perhaps even hemorrhage if I went into labor. And they weren't going to be able to do the usual types of C-sections on me because of it. So they were going to have to do the actual originating long form, long belly cut. So I had to get prepared for all that, and they put me in the hospital ahead of time. So they put in the balloons in my legs because they told me that they might have to inflate those to prevent me from hemorrhaging on the table to stop blood loss. They did that. They'll tell you that that doesn't hurt and they don't give you any anesthetic, or at least they didn't me. If they try to, do not let them. It does hurt. It absolutely hurts. Um, I was already dealing with all these things and they were quite painful. So finally, I'm on the OR table. They even pinched a nerve in my neck when they were trying to set my main IV to. So they did all kinds of stuff that was
my goodness. I'm
before I
sorry you went through that.
yeah, before I even get to the operation. Well, so then we're in the procedure and they did the general anesthetic, so I'm completely under. Now, this is when I had my near-death experience. Now, I'll tell you what happened surface side with the doctors and everything after I tell you what happened with me when I was under. So I went in to my procedure and of course they put me under and I remember I woke up in this dark space. It felt like it was a tunnel, but honestly, it was more like just a large void, a large dark void. And the reason why it felt like a tunnel was because of how empty and kind of echoing it seemed. And at the very end of it, there was this tiny little speck of light, like a little tiny, tiny pinprick of a light. And I see it and it starts to grow. And suddenly I start feeling this overwhelming sensation of the purest, most wholesome, joyful, creative love and every most overwhelming, beautiful feeling all in once. And it's like I'm like a moth to the flame. All I want to do is get closer to that light because it's emanating this amazing feeling that I've never felt since, and I'm not sure if I ever will until I get back in that space. Um, and I really wanted to get to it. So I start walking forward, and suddenly I feel pressure on this shoulder first. And then I feel pressure on this shoulder. And I turn and I look, and on this side, I see my paternal grandmother, my dad's mother, and she passed away when I was 3. So this is significant. And I recognize her. She looked like herself, but when she was about maybe 35 years old. So she looked glowing and youthful and just, but I knew it was her. Like I knew this is my grandmother. And I seen her and then I look over here and it's my maternal great grandmother, my mother's grandmother. And she passed away when I was 15. And again, same, and she had bright blue eyes and stunning red hair. My son has the same red hair and blue eyes. And just beautiful ladies. And they both are like in unison, go back, it's not your time yet. There's lots more left for you to do. If you keep going forward, you won't be able to go back. And I was objective. I was like, no, I got to get to that. And something about the way they said it, though, even though I was objective, I looked at their faces one more time and then I turned around and I woke up. And when I woke up, I didn't immediately open my eyes. I did, however, hear my cousin talking with my husband, and they were discussing the baby and, some of the things that had happened with my surgery. And I finally kind of cracked my eyes open, and the first thing I said is, "Where is my son?" So obviously, as soon as I came back, I immediately was aware of what it was that was behind me that I had to come back for. And I didn't know, though, that when this had happened, and that's when my cousin and my ex proceeded to tell me, you hemorrhaged and you lost all of your blood. You had to have 25 blood transfusions. It's been so many hours that you've been under. The baby is stable and fine, but you won't be able to see him for a little while because, you're still in post recovery. We almost lost you, and this is where you're at. And I was just kind of like, oh, well, that makes sense. I almost died. Like, okay. Like, um, and I didn't immediately tell either of them about my near death experience, about that happening, but it was fresh in my mind. Um, I waited for a little while until they finally took me. When they knew I was coherent and I was stable enough, I can move to a regular room. Um, and my husband was in the room with me, and I was like, "Look, I got to ask you more about what happened." He's like, "Well, I can only tell you so much because I wasn't actually able to be in the room at that time because of the kind of procedure they had to do." And I was like, "I know, but whatever they told you, I need you to tell me every detail. How long was I under? How long did this last? Because to me, it was like 5 minutes. And this is what happened, those 5 minutes. Like, this is huge." And he was kind of stunned. He was just like, wow. And I think it blew his mind, but he didn't disbelieve me. Like, with everything that he told me, and everything that happened. And even when I was coherent at that point, I was still in the hospital for 2.5 weeks, and I had to have another platelet bag. They almost had to take me back in because I was having a hard time healing. And so some of the internal that they had to do was having a hard time healing. But I did recover, and I'm here now, so I can share the story with everybody. And it was kind of my opportunity for a new lease in life, if you will, because it was shortly after that, when my son was 11 months old, that I kind of had my call to action moment where I knew I needed to become a writer, and that I had a new opportunity to use my talents that had always existed, but I had a new appreciation for life. I didn't just see the dark sides of it. I recognized that even though there was a lot that is heavy and dark, and I can see it pretty well, I can detect it real good, that I could also be and was a source of light myself. So, yeah,
It's beautiful. That's
thank you.
absolutely beautiful. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're back, and I'm glad baby's okay, your son's okay. Did you know you were having a son, or
I did know I was having a son. I had an ultrasound, and obviously the ultrasound also was what helped me to find out about the placenta precreta situation. And I have three sons, actually. I have four children altogether. Three are adults, and he's 15, so he's my baby. But my two middle sons actually have Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and they are wheelchair bound. So because I knew I was a carrier of that disease, it's a horrible, terrible genetic disease that I carry, and my sons actually manifested it. But my youngest son was fortunate not to inherit it. He's the only one of the three who doesn't. And so because I knew that I carried that, I actually knew ahead of time. I had an amniocentesis. I had all kinds of different procedures done. Um, and that actually probably did help save my life because I was so insistent. And there were a few doctors at the beginning who were very dismissive. But I was very much an advocate, argued and fought for me and my son to be here today. And we're here.
good for you? Good for you.
Yep.
Yay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Yeah, I know you're you're going to have a lot more stories for us. You are welcome to come back and share some more of them. I'm so excited. I'm intrigued in the UFOs and all that. I have had experiences having six grays in my bedroom, so I'm very
Wow.
intrigued with um with all of that. I have interest in all of that. So all of this I actually do, but I've had all kinds of different experiences. So I would love to hear more of yours and different things
Well, this
that
has
you've
been a
seen
great joy
and
for me. So I would love to come back sometime, and it's been really awesome to talk to you tonight, Dana.
well, I appreciate you being with us and telling us about your experiences. So thank you very much. Yeah. If there's anybody else out there that has a story you would like to share, email me. It's okay. Email me. Lighttalk423 at gmail.com. And we will talk with everyone later. Bye.